Thank you for your service. And if you could actually remain, we would love to you come, but thank you for your service and for your sacrifice. We honor you and we recognize you today. And so today, as Jalen mentioned, we are in week 3. God loves. And 2 weeks ago, when we kicked off the series, joy in the. And then last week, in light of the midterms, we talked about politics. About a practice that if we choose, has the potential to allow us to breathe in our, or the creation of margin in our lives, experience greater joy, freedom, as well as. Right now, Jalen and the band are going to lead us in a song. Build this practice into our lives, the extreme. So let's enter into this moment together.
Don't wanna rush on ahead straight when you're Lord, I my own strength right here. When it comes to your presence, I'm learning to rest in your nearness. Notice you are. Don't wanna rush on my own strength. Lord, I rush on ahead for your right. When it comes to your prayer, to your voice, I'm learning just to rest in your near, to notice you are. Your spirit voice, nearness are speaking.
And those, I'm not in a hurry. Myself, that's not The reality is, they rush to work and then back home. Activities, their games, their lessons. And my guess is that some of you here probably no reason for me to rush. And it was after this completely wrecked the front end of my car. Earlier, we're also of the year. Exactly this, where we're going to be tempted to be in more of a hurry, even in more and the gatherings that we friends are coming about tonight, I think is so applicable. This practice and build it. Allow us to experience hope, greater freedom, and greater joy in our lives. In California, there was a man fly, and unfortunately, he wanted originally as a kid, rather than to go up and fly in a hot air balloon, how Larry ever dreamed of doing that before? Anyone? Okay, some of you have, I know, because I did too as a kid. So he did this, and his plan was he wanted to fly feet up in the air. And so he understood that for this, because nobody wants to be hungry, nobody wants to be thirsty when they're strapped to a lawn chair flying. He knew that if he really wanted to get down, that those out when he wanted to come down. And so Larry had this all planned with these helium balloons attached. It was anchored to the ground by 2 ropes. And after Larry got into the chair, this guy cut the first rope, the second one snapped, and it launched Larry into the air at more quickly. Every minute he's going up another 1,000 feet in the air. And the very first person to see him was a TWA pilot with a bunch of helium balloons attached. And so this guy, this TWA pilot, sees him and then radios to the tower. And so imagine, try putting yourself in Larry's seat, literally in Larry's seat, and you're 16,000 feet in. You can imagine he was probably scared to death. Some of those balloons, and he began to slowly descend. And the crazy, he ended up getting wrapped up in some power lines at the end and was immediately to me. But so often, but probably for some of us, probably for many of us, out of control, and there's nothing that we can do to stop. None of you probably want to live like this either. But when we look at our lives so often, our lives are so busy, and there's always so much to do. And it could be work, school, family. It could be those house projects that never seem to end. It might even be church, in that there always seems to be someone or something pulling at us and demanding our time, attention, as well as our energy. And so we feel like, you know what, when it comes to taking a break, when it comes to resting, we feel like we can't do it, because if we do, that to-do list is just gonna keep getting longer and longer and longer. But thankfully, as we're gonna be talking about today, this is not the way that we have to live, because there is a different way, a better way that God has created and designed for us to live. And if we choose to live in this way, because trust me, it requires us to choose, because this isn't going to come naturally. But if we actually choose to live in this way, it will improve the quality of our lives by allowing us to breathe and experience greater freedom, joy, and peace in our lives. And what that practice is that it's called Sabbath. And 2 months ago, we talked about Sabbath in our work-life series. But that weekend, we actually talked about Sabbath in the context of why we should observe the Sabbath. We talked about it more conceptually. And if you missed that weekend, I want to invite you to go to our website. You can go to our app and you can catch it there. But tonight, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about the how we can actually build this practice into our lives. Because if you have ever tried to rest, and I'm not talking about resting once in a blue moon, but if you've ever tried to rest regularly and consistently, you understand that it is an extremely difficult thing to do. Because a lot of us, we think, you know what? Rest, why is that hard? You just sort of fall into it. You don't have to plan for it. You don't have to prepare for it. If you rest, just rest. You go on vacation and it's no big deal. But you know, and I know, if you have tried to consistently do this, it is really, really hard to do. And so tonight, we're going to be getting really practical, and we're going to be talking about how we can build this practice into our lives. And when we look at the scriptures, and we look at this whole principle of Sabbath, what we see is that Sabbath is really important to God. So important that he actually made it one of his 10 commandments. And honestly, if I was God, I was thinking about this past week, but honestly, if I was God and I had to pick 10 things that I wanted my people to know and to do, rest probably wouldn't be on that list. But God chose it, which tells us that it's really important. And so in the second book of the Bible, in the book of Exodus, this is what God told his people. And he says to them, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Remember the Sabbath day, he says, by keeping it holy. And we're going to come back to that first sentence. And then he continues on by saying, 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed that day. Let me actually pick it up. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and he made it holy. And so what it says here is that it says a lot, and we're going to primarily look at that first sentence. But the Sabbath was so important, it is so important to God, and was so important thousands of years ago when he first said this, that God said to his people, I don't want you just to observe the Sabbath, but I want everyone around you to do it as well. I want your animals to do it. I want your employees, the people who work for you, to do it. Everyone is to do this because it is that important. Because I've designed this and I've woven this into your very fabric, into your very DNA, this need for rest. But I think that first sentence, as we read, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, I think that's such a powerful, powerful sentence. Because God tells us, remember, don't forget to observe the Sabbath day. And the reason why he tells us this is because he understood that as human beings, that our natural inclination would be to forget. That our natural inclination would be to go, to work all the time. And that's why he tells us, don't forget the Sabbath day. And he also tells us in the rest of the sentence, this is how you can remember. This is how you can actually practice this in your life. And he tells us it's by keeping it holy. And that word holy, it does not mean, what it does not mean is it doesn't mean that on the Sabbath day, whatever that day may be for you, it doesn't mean that you have to do religious activities all the time. But rather what holy means is to be set apart for God. And so on the Sabbath day, as we read in that passage from the book of Exodus, God is saying to us, and he tells us, you know, for 6 days do all of your work. But this one day that's called the Sabbath, it's supposed to be different. It's supposed to look different. It's supposed to be different than those other 6. I want you to set it apart. And I want you to set it apart. And what I want you to do on that day is I want you to rest. 6 days work, 1 day rest. And so he tells us to set it apart. But what he also tells us is that he tells us, I want you to set it apart for me. In that on that day, he tells us, what I want you to do is I want you to do whatever it is that it takes for you to be re-energized, for you to be recharged, for you to be refueled. And so that you can then enter into your week, not drained and not tired, but rather full of energy and life, so that you can love and serve me as well as the people around you. And honestly, when you think about it, what it takes for us to recharge, what it probably takes for you to recharge and for me to recharge is probably different. And so whatever it is for you, God's saying to us, do that. Do whatever it takes to fill up your tank. And I was thinking about this past week, and I was thinking about how my wife Robin and I, we rest. And we rest very, very differently, because my wife Robin, she's an extrovert. So on her Sabbath, what she loves to do, what fills up her tank, and what really gives her life is being with other people. People who she loves and appreciates, having conversation, laughing with them, because that's what really energizes her. But when I think about what she does, that's the last thing that I want to do, because I don't want to be around people on my Sabbath, because I'm an introvert. And so being around people on my Sabbath, not exactly my idea of rest. Because on weekends, I'm here with all of you amazing people, which is awesome. I look forward to it. But because I'm an introvert, it's really draining to me. And so Mondays are really important for me to just be alone and to just spend some time alone, processing, reflecting, and just thinking back on the weekend as well as the week. And honestly, it doesn't even matter what I'm doing. I could be out mowing the lawn, I could take a walk, I could be reading a book, listening to music, watching a movie, reading the scriptures. It doesn't matter. But that alone time refreshes me and allows me to then enter into my week, not depleted, but more full of life and energy to do exactly what God is asking me to do that week. And so this is the Sabbath principle, in that he says, remember the Sabbath day. Don't forget to do this, because it's that important, by keeping it holy, which means to set that day apart and do the things that will give us life. And so he says, don't forget to do it. But as I mentioned before, if you've ever tried to do this on a regular basis, it is really, really hard. And an author by the name of Judith Shulevitz, she understood this when she wrote these words in a New York Times article a number of years ago. And this is what she wrote. She said, most people mistakenly believe that all you have to do to stop working is not work. The inventors of the Sabbath understood that it was a much more complicated undertaking. You cannot downshift casually and easily the way you might slip into bed at the end of a long day. This is why the Puritan and Jewish Sabbaths were so exactingly intentional, requiring extensive advanced preparation. The rules didn't exist to torture the faithful, but instead they were meant to communicate the insight that interrupting the ceaseless round of striving requires surprisingly strenuous acts of the will, one that has to be bolstered by habit as well as by social sanction. And what Shulevitz is saying is that she's saying that if you want to do this, you got to work hard at it, because it's not easy. You have to be intentional. You have to prep for it. You even have to fight for it. And that's a very counterintuitive thought to a lot of us, because as I was talking about earlier, most of us think, hey, you know what? My rest day, I don't have to prep for that, right? You just stop working. You sort of just fall into it. You might just sleep in and do something. But that's not what she's saying. And if you've experienced this, or if you tried to do this, you understand this, because you have to work for it. Just like we're intentional about so many other areas in our life, we have to be intentional about our rest as well. And you see this all throughout, especially for the Jewish people, all throughout their history, because they have rules and they have principles that tell them exactly what they can and cannot do on their Sabbath. And as Shulevitz said, these rules and these principles aren't there to make their lives more difficult, but rather they really are a reflection to tell us it is really hard to do this. And because the Jewish people, they want to do this because they understand that it is so life-giving, they've created these parameters to make sure that they do it. And it's the same thing for us, in that if we want to do this, and if we want to have greater life, greater energy, if we want to be able to breathe in our life and to really be able to have that margin and not feel like we're exhausted all the time and not feel like we're at the end of our rope every single day, we have to prep for it. We have to be intentional about it. we have to work hard for it. And so tonight, what I wanted to do was I wanted to get really practical, as I said, and I wanted to give you 3 thoughts as to how we can build this discipline that's called Sabbath, because trust me, it is a discipline, how we can build this not only into our day, but also into our week as well as our year. And so all you have to do to remember these 3 thoughts is you have to just remember 6 letters. And these 3 thoughts are originally from a pastor out in Southern California named Rick Warren. And what these letters are DD, WWAA. That's all you have to remember. DDWWAA. Let's actually say them together. DDWWAA. That's it. And what the DD stands for is that it stands for divert daily. Meaning that every single day we take some time to connect with God. And it might be 10 minutes, it could be 15 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, it could be less, it could be more. But we carve out some time every single day to do whatever it is for us that allows us to connect with Him. And it could be, for you, it could be reading the scriptures, it could be praying, it could be listening to music, it could be taking a walk out in nature. But however you connect with God, do that. And in the Gospel of John, Jesus tells us these words. He says, I am the vine. You are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit, because apart from me, you can do nothing. And what Jesus is telling us in the Gospel of John is that He's saying to us that if you want to create something beautiful in your life, if you want to create something lasting, if through your life you want to radiate hope, justice, peace, love, and life, and you want this to not only fill up your life, but also spill out into the lives of the people around us, what He's saying here is, just like a branch is connected to the vine, you have to be connected to me, because I am the source of all of these things. And that's what He's telling us. This is what you have to do, He says. And also the reason why He tells us to remain in Him, to stay connected to Him, is because He understood that every single day of our lives, there would be things that try to move us away from Him, that try to sever our connection with Him. It could be fear, guilt, shame, power, sex, money, but whatever it is, He understood that every day there would be something that would try to drag us away from Him and cut that connection. And so He says that if you want to live this beautiful life, if you want to live this life where your life and also the lives of others, you radiate out love and life and hope and all of these great things, you have to stay connected. And when we divert daily, when we make the choice to say, Jesus, every single day, I'm going to carve out whatever that may be, 5, 10, 20 minutes. When we divert daily, we are making this choice. And for the past probably 7+ years, really ever since I've had children, and my oldest now is 7 years old, I've struggled with this. I've struggled greatly with diverting daily. Because I'm a pretty disciplined person and I love routine. And so before I had children, every single morning between 6:30 and 7 a.m., for that period of time, I would spend that time diverting daily. I would carve out time every morning to spend that time connecting with Jesus, usually by reading the scriptures and by praying. But if you have young children or you have had young children, you understand mornings are crazy. It is like a free-for-all. People are wanting to go to the bathroom, their diapers to be changed, like someone has to do something, they're asking for food, all of this kind of stuff, right? So mornings are crazy. And so after my children were born, I was trying, and I'm a morning person, so mornings are the best time for me. And so I was fighting for time in the morning, but it just was not working. And so I tried a different rhythm, a different time in the day to try to exercise this practice of diverting daily. I tried lunch, I tried in the afternoon, I tried before I went to bed, but nothing seemed to work. I couldn't get into a regular rhythm, and it was so incredibly frustrating. And if I'm going to be honest with you, for certain periods of time, I have tried and I've tried and I've tried. And there have been certain pockets of time in those 7 years where I said, you know what, maybe I should just give up, because I just cannot figure this out. I cannot seem to do this. But 2 months ago in September, a friend of mine challenged me to instill this practice into my life again, to try to build it in. And so I've been doing this for the past 2 months because I found this sweet spot where I have every morning where I'm able to drop off my kids. After I drop off my kids at the bus stop to when I have to leave for work, I have this 15 to 20 minute window where I've been doing this and just been trying to connect with Jesus. And there have been some incredible things that have happened as a result. And just during this time, God's been showing me how much fear I have in my life and how this fear so often dictates how I live my life, the decisions that I make. And so God's even been showing me, hey, these are the steps I want you to take so you can experience freedom in this area. Oftentimes, when I spend time with him in the mornings, what he does is that he reminds me of what's important and that he realigns my values, and he also tells me, hey, this is what I want you to focus on today. Because two of the questions that I ask him every single morning is, God, what do you want me to know and what do you want me to do today? And oftentimes to that last question, how he answers it is he tells me, I just want you to love the people around you. Love them to the best of your ability. But at the same time, what this 15 to 20 minutes every morning allows me to do is allows me to just take a breath. After the craziness and the busyness of the morning, it allows me to just breathe and to calm down before I enter into the rest of my day. Diverting daily has given me so much life and has been so extraordinarily refreshing. And not only in the way that I approach my work, but also in the way that I approach my family as well, and so many other facets of my life. And what I came to understand is that not only is it beneficial individually, but also is beneficial organizationally as well. Because there's this organization out there called International Justice Mission, or IJM. And IJM's mission is to seek justice for the poor and the powerless in this world. And they've been around for a number of years. And what they do is they rescue victims from all around the world, from slavery, sex trafficking, police brutality, all of these things. And they also work with local law enforcement to prosecute those involved. They're an extraordinary organization. But what they understand, so they fight for justice. But what IJM understands is that their work of justice begins with prayer. And so they believe in this so strongly that every single morning, how every single one of their employees starts their day, and they have offices all around the world. They have so many employees, but every single employee, how they start off their day is that they don't answer emails, they don't return phone calls, they don't go to meetings, but they spend 30 minutes in silence. And what they do during that time is that they pray, they meditate, and they spiritually reflect. Every single person in the organization. And then at 11 a.m., everyone stops what they're doing and they come together to pray. And some people might look at that and say, you know what, that's such wasted time. Do you understand the productivity, all the work that you're losing? You're wasting your time by praying. But that's not how Gary Haugen, who's the CEO and founder of IJM and who has been working for more than 2 decades fighting against human trafficking, that's not how he sees it. Because this is what Gary believes. He says, prayerless striving leads only to exhaustion. And he says, I have learned just how crucial it is to settle my soul in the presence of Jesus every morning. He's saying how important it is. I recognize how important it is to divert daily. Even though it's tempting to hurry into our work, we intentionally still ourselves and connect with our Maker, the God who delights in restoring and encouraging his children. As an organization, that's why they do it, because he understands it is so important in what we do to divert daily. But in addition to diverting daily, what also we have to do, and something that I've been doing as well, is that WW, also what it stands for is to withdraw weekly. And that's basically the Sabbath principle, that once a week, 1 day a week, we do something different. And 6 days we work, but that 1 day we rest. We do whatever it is that fills us up so that we can then enter into our week with the energy to love not only God, but also the people around us. And the interesting thing is that last week, actually after this service, Danny Cox and I were walking out to our cars in the parking lot, and someone in our community came up to us and asked us about the Sabbath. And he had no idea that we were talking about it this weekend. But he asked us about the Sabbath, this whole Sabbath principle. And he said, do you have to observe the Sabbath on Sunday? Is that the only day that you can do it? And I thought that was such an interesting question. And really the answer to that is no. And when you look at the New Testament, specifically in the Gospel of Mark, what Jesus says is that he tells us that man was not made for the Sabbath, but Sabbath was made for man. And what that means is that the Sabbath wasn't meant to be something that's burdensome, something that's difficult, that makes our lives more miserable, but rather the Sabbath was a gift that was given to us to set us free, to allow us to live the lives that we've been created to live. And so ultimately, when you think about that principle, and when you think about, does Sabbath have to be on a Sunday? Does it have to be on a specific day? The answer is no, because it's not about rigidity. It's not about, it has to be this day or no, or it's useless. You can't do it at all. It's not about that. It's about upholding the principle of rest. And so if your Sabbath is Sunday, great. If it's Friday, fantastic. My Sabbath, it's not Sunday, it's not Saturday, but it's Monday. And if it's Monday, phenomenal. If it's a different day, it's whatever it is, great. But it's really about seeking this God-centered rest, whatever day that is. And not just once in a blue moon, but consistently and regularly, week after week. And the extraordinary thing is that with this whole principle of rest, God hasn't just built rest into the fabric of humanity, but he's also built it into the very fabric of creation. And a number of years ago, Dave Wilson, who's one of our co-founders and also our lead pastor over at our Orion campus, he came to recognize this. Because in a meeting, he was in a meeting with a bunch of other people, and one of the guys in this meeting said to him, "Do you know that they actually rest bowling pins?" And Dave was like, "No, they don't. You're lying. You're just trying to trick me, and you're just lying to me, and that's not true at all." But this guy kept insisting, and he said, "No, they really do." And so Dave wanted to see if this was true. And so he went across Square Lake Road, and there's a bowling alley across the street. And he went to the owner, and he said to the owner, "I heard a rumor that you rest bowling pins." And so the owner said, "Dave, come with me." And so he took him behind the lanes, and he took him into a room where there were all of these shelves. And on these shelves were all of these bowling pins just resting. They're just sitting there. That was it. They're just resting. And you're thinking, what in the world? But yet, that's what they were doing. And this guy, this owner said to Dave, is that we rest our pins, sometimes for a week, sometimes for a month, sometimes 2 months. And when we put them back in the lanes, you know what happens is that they pop. They jump to life. Because that time away from working for these pins, from constantly getting hit day after day, to hour after hour by all of these bowling balls. Because imagine, I was thinking, the life of a bowling pin, not exactly easy, right? So they're constantly getting hit. And so this time away, what it does is that it gives the wood new life. And I was thinking, if that's what happens to wood when it rests, what about us? How much more for us? Because life hits us hard every single day, and it does. It does for me, and it does for you. And what rest does for us is that it fills up our soul. It fills up our soul with life and energy and all that we need to then enter in, to be re-energized, to then enter into our week. And so if you're sitting there and you're wondering, why am I so exhausted every single day? Why do I feel like every day I'm at the end of my rope? Let me ask you a question. When is the last time you rested? When was the last time, one day a week, you just said, I am choosing not to work, and I'm going to do something that fills me up with life? Let me ask you, have you diverted daily? Is that a practice that you do? Because it is so important. These are the first two things: DD, divert daily; WW, withdraw weekly. And before we get to the AA, what we're going to do is I actually wanted to invite our ushers forward for the offering, to receive our offering for today. And so ushers, if you want to come forward. And if this is your first time here, let me say to you, please do not feel any obligation to give. We're just thrilled that you're here. And what we instead love for you to do is, after the service, we'd love for you to go out to the hub, and you'll see the people out there. They have orange shirts. There's actually a pole right there with a bunch of TVs around it that say the hub. We'd love to meet you and to answer any questions that you have. And if you're somebody who does give, we want to say thank you. Thank you for catching the vision of what God is doing in this place. And I know that 80% of our people, we do give online, and that's how Robin and I give. And we give via the app. And so if you give via the app, the website, you can also text, and all of that is really safe, very secure, very, very quick. We want to say thank you. But DD is divert daily, as I said. WW, withdraw weekly. And what AA is to abandon annually. And what that principle is that every single year we take an extended period of time to pull away from our normal routine. And that might be taking a vacation and leaving and going somewhere else. It could be a staycation, it could be a retreat, but whatever it is, breaking that rhythm in our lives of day to day, the busyness and the craziness, and taking that extended time to be able to experience rest in our lives. And I did this a number of months ago, and let me tell you, it was absolutely life-changing. Because I've been at Kensington now for 10 months. And for the first 7 months that I was here, I was working like crazy. Because I was trying to learn a new culture, I was trying to learn a new system, I was trying to get to know my coworkers, I was trying to get to know all of you amazing people. And also I was trying to get to know, because I'm the new guy, I also wanted to make a good impression. So I was taking a lot more time, putting a lot more effort into things than I normally would. And so I was working a lot of hours. And I remember Robin, during those first 7 months, she would say to me over and over again, your family misses you. You're not really ever around, and even when you are, you're not really even present. And every single time she would say this, I would say to her, can you please cut me some slack? Can you please be patient? I recognize it's a crazy month, but next month, it's gonna be different. Next month, it's gonna slow down. I promise. Never should have said those last 2 words. I promise. Because guess what? Do you guys think it slowed down? Of course not, exactly. Of course it didn't slow down. It just kept on going and going and going. But in August, I decided to take 2 weeks off. And as a family, we drove out to Minnesota to visit Robin's family. And they live right on a lake. And I love this place because it's so incredibly peaceful and it's almost impossible to do any work there. And trust me, I know because I've tried. And so it just causes you to rest. It forces you to slow down. And as a family, that's exactly what we did. We slowed down enough to play together, to eat together, to relax together, to watch movies together, to swim together. We slowed down enough to be together. And what I learned during those 2 weeks is that I learned how much fun I can have with my family again, especially with my children. And those 2 weeks, it was a massive paradigm shift for me. Because if I'm going to be honest with you, before August, if you were to ask me what my top priorities were, I would have told you, you know what my top priority is? It's God, followed by family, then followed by work. But that would have been a total lie. Because the number one priority in my life at that time was work, followed way behind by God and family. And so because work was the most important thing in my life at that time, whatever else competed with it, whatever else I saw as an obstacle for me working, I saw it as an impediment. I even saw it as a nuisance. And so on some nights, I would even look at my children and I would just wish, could you please go to bed early so I could just work? If I'm honest with you, that's exactly how I felt. But what this trip forced me to do, it forced me to slow down. It forced me and it reminded me how much fun my children are, how deeply I love them. And as a parent, the fact that, you know what, I only get one shot at this. And so as a result, I began seeing my children not as a have to, but more so as a get to. And I came back from that trip saying to myself and saying to God, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to go back to that person because you know who that person is just miserable. Nobody wants to be around that person. I do not want to be that person anymore, God. How can I prevent myself from choosing that and going back to that? And what I came to realize was that if I don't want to go back to that, if I actually want to be somebody who is pleasant to be around, somebody who actually really loves their children and has their priorities in the right order, what it requires me to do is to build in rest in my life, to do exactly what we've been talking about today. To divert daily, to withdraw weekly, and to abandon annually. Because one of the things that I found as I started to build these things more into my life is that when I do these things, that so often when all I'm doing is working, I get blinders. And when I never rest, I get blinders on. And all I can see is I have the singular focus and I'm just working. But when I rest, what it does is that the blinders come off. It breaks that cycle and God says, hey, look around you. Look around you, see what's really important. Work, It's not that important. It's not really that important at all. But what's way more important than any of that is me, as well as the people around you, those little kids that I've given you, because you only got one shot with them. And so I remember thinking that, and this is something that I've had to choose almost every single day, and trust me, it's been a bumpy ride, because old habits die hard. But maybe that might be the case for some of you here tonight as well. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, wow, I'm so exhausted and I am so tired. And what you're talking about today, I want to do that, but it's just really hard. How do I do that? And if you want to take that first step, I would say don't try to do this all at once, but choose one of these things. And if you're going to choose anything, try diverting daily, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is, and build one of these practices into your life. Because trust me, I know, because I've been doing this, I've been on this journey for the last few months, it is so incredibly life-giving. And it allows you to realign your values, to look up, and to be reminded of what is truly important in your life. And I think one of the such interesting things, as I was reminded of this verse earlier this week, because Jesus speaks some powerful words in the Gospel of Matthew, and what he talks about rest. And what Jesus tells us is that if you want to experience true rest in your life, you want to stop running, you want to stop feeling exhausted, and you want to really be able to experience true peace and true rest, he tells us in the Gospel of Matthew, I'm not just going to point you towards rest. I'm not just going to point you in that direction. But what he tells us is this, in that he says, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened. And my guess is that there are some of you here tonight who are weary and burdened. And the reason why he tells us to come to him is because he says, I will give you rest, true rest for your souls, a rest that you can feel at the very core of your being. I won't point you to rest, but in me there is rest. And so in a moment, Jalen and the band, they're gonna lead us in a song. And this song, I hope for those of you who so deeply desire rest in your life, will be a prayer, and that you will sing it out as a prayer. Because this song, one of the things that is gonna be sung in this song is, give me Jesus. And if you are wanting rest in your life, that would be your prayer tonight. Jesus, would you please enter into my life? Because as we just read, Jesus is that rest, the only rest that can truly satisfy. So let this song wash over you tonight.
when I am alone. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You can have all this world. Give me Jesus. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. The riches of this world could never satisfy. Let my heart want for only you. Whoa, let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. The riches of this world will never satisfy. Let my heart want for only you. Yeah, let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. Let my heart want for nothing but you, just you. The riches of this world will never satisfy. Let my heart want for only you. For me, only Jesus. For me, only Jesus. For me, only Jesus. For me, only Jesus. Come on, everybody, invite everybody to stand here. We're going to sing a song that just simply says, set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. How many of us want more of God? Amen. Let's sing this out. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want one more time, say. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. Sing no place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be than hearing your love, hearing your love. No place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather. No place I'd rather than here, than here. Sing it out, no place. There's no place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be than hearing your love. One more time, say. There's no place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be. No place I'd rather be than hearing your love, hearing your sing. So set a fire. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more. Let's sing it as one voice. Sing it out. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more. Just the voices sing. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more. So set a fire down in my soul that I can't contain, that I can't control. I want more of you, God. I want more of you, God.
And so, God, that is the cry of our heart tonight. We need more of you. Because as we read just before we sang these songs, is that it's only in you that we can find true rest for our souls. For those who are tired, for those who are exhausted, for those who are depleted, I pray, Lord, that you would enter into their lives and do what only you can do, which is refresh them, re-energize them by your Holy Spirit. So thank you, Jesus, that you love us, that this is what you desire for us, to live a life where we can breathe, where we can live a life of freedom and joy and peace. And we thank you and pray these things in your name. Amen. And so, thank you. On your way out, we want to give you one of these, and this is a card that talks about just the amazing things that God has been doing in our community since 2010. So we'd love for you to take one. Also want to invite you back for midweek this Wednesday night at 7. Dan Sadler is going to be here, great friend of Kensington. And come at 7 o'clock. And also, if anybody would like to receive prayer, our prayer team will be down front. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great Saturday.